Welcome to the podcast. Today my guest is Big K, or Craig Collett. Craig is a radio announcer. Is that the correct term?
That's it. Broadcaster or announcer.
Announcer? Not a DJ?
Well, you know, they used to call us DJs back in the day when you actually played records, but we don't do that anymore.
When you started out, were you actually doing records?
Yeah, that was my first gig. But I mean, I suppose we've got to go back to the reason why I decided to try radio. Always been a bit of a smart ass. And I'd saved up a lot of money to go overseas with a girlfriend.
Yep.
You know, we'd worked, I don't know, for 12 months, saved about 25 grand back in the day. And then that didn't work out. So I was in Brisbane staying at a friend's house and Triple M was on. And the guy was just terrible. It was pretty ordinary.
You're living in Brisbane?
Yeah, living with friends in Brisbane. I actually wasn't, you know, I was just staying with them. I didn't know what I was going to do. You know, I had some money, didn't know what my next step was. I was about 24. And, you know, you're kind of lost when you're younger. So I was kind of lost going, what am I going to do? You know, I'd done half a business degree, didn't like that. I'd done surveying, like weird stuff as you're younger. And I say that to all young people, go and try stuff. You know, and that's what I was doing. So heard this guy on Triple M went, oh, and one of my friends went, you can do better than that. Why don't you do radio? And I was like, radio? So then fast forward sort of 12 months, I'd done a dodgy course in Brisbane where they'd pretty much take all your money and not much chance of you getting a gig. I sent out 46 application tapes and you get a standard letter back, which always made me laugh because it was the same format. You know, you need to work on this, slow down, do this, do that. Was all different signature at the bottom, different radio station logo. I got one from B105, which was hilarious because I ended up getting a job offer from them about 2 years later. And I got 2 jobs in the end. I actually sent another 11 tapes, and out of that second batch, I got 2 jobs. I got a job at Swan Hill, and I got a job at Mount Isa.
Okay, so how did you go about putting the tape together?
Well, pretty much, you know, if you're keen, as you would have been when you wanted to, you know, be a musician.
Yeah.
I had a little cassette player and I, you know, used to pretend to read the news and all that sort of stuff. So basically it was a cassette and you recorded bits and pieces onto the cassette so they could hear you. And by doing that, I ended up getting a casual role, which was an unpaid role at Bay FM up at Cleveland. Mm-hmm. And the only gig I could get was mid-dawn. So I started at 12 till 6 in the morning.
Oh, wow.
And I used to laugh because they'd let you bring all your own music in. Oh. Because I had no idea about, you know, the swearing in songs. And, you know, I played some songs and went, oh, hang on. There's a Lenny Kravitz song called Cab Driver. And there's a bit in it where he goes, F you, I'm a survivor. And I went, oh, I don't know if I'll get away with that. And the hilarious part is all radio stations have a logger tape. So everything's recorded. In the old days, it was actually a tape machine going. And it used to squeak in the studio. So as soon as you turn the mic on, the logger tape would start and it'd be squeaking in the background. So anyway, that led me to, I took the job in Mount Isa because I wanted to stay in Queensland.
How long were you doing the Cleveland thing for? How long?
Well, that's the funny part is the guys in Mount Isa thought I'd been doing it for 6 years and I'd done it for 6 weeks, one shift. So I'd done 6 shifts.
Yeah.
I'll never forget, it's Easter time. And I go, okay, I'm going to leave early so I can settle into Mount Isa, suss it all out, and then I'll go on air, you know, the Tuesday after the Easter break. So I get up there on the Thursday, and the program director at the time goes, oh, great, you're here early, you can go on this afternoon. So, and I'll never forget, you used to have to read the weather for Mount Isa, Cloncurry and Julia Creek, and my first couple of breaks, my hand was just shaking. I was so nervous. And they had, back to your original question, they had record players. Oh. So you learnt to slip start. And I'm glad I did because that was traditional radio, slip starting music, and that's where the disc jockey thing came from. And then they were sort of being phased out. That's probably the last radio station that I worked at that actually used them. And it was a better feel. Your music was a bit warmer than it is now of you know, everything off computer. And we had CD players, but they were home CD players. They just gone and bought them from the local electrical place.
Did you find that things were a little bit more relaxed back then?
Like once you knew how to do it was more relaxed because people knew you were human and they knew you would make mistakes. And you had to time out. Like one of my first jobs was, firing the ad breaks in the John Laws show, So you had these old, what they call cart machines, looked like a big square thing, and they all had numbers. And so the little dodgy computer, which looked like something from the dark ages, had the numbers there, and it might have, 4 minutes of 30-second advertising in there, and the middle one might misfire. So you now have a 30-second air gap in the middle of that, and the next one's going to fire. So you had about 26 seconds. So we used to have community service announcements in the studio. So as soon as it went clunk, it made a funny noise, you went, okay, we're off air. So you'd have to turn the mic on straight away, pick up, and sight read a 30-second community service announcement in about 26 seconds because you knew the next ad was going to fire. So you got really good at fixing mistakes, thinking on your feet, and the nervousness had to go because just like when you're on stage as a musician, you have to perform. You're on now. Don't think, just go.
I just find it really funny. I mean, I don't know if it's the same for you, but when you're on stage playing, the little gaps feel like they're 30 seconds. And that might be like 2 seconds or 3 seconds. They feel really long.
And then the added stress on a radio station is you have what's called delay. So you have a 15-second buffer. So what happens is if something goes wrong, you can flick from listening to delay to on air, got to wait a bit for the right gap and hit boom, and then you're on live with no delay, but you cut out those gaps. But when you first do it, you panic, flick it across, punch it straight away, and you just chopped off 15 seconds of what you said. So there's that added stress of going, okay, I need to learn how this works. So, but once you get good at it, because we were timing out to the news every hour, you had to time out exactly to the news because the news would be coming through a satellite feed. We had these really old desks. You had to turn it to this channel and fade the news up, and you could really balls that up. If you're out 2.5 minutes, your song ended early, what are you going to do? 2.5 minutes doesn't sound like a long time.
Oh man, that's a lot of talking.
It's a lot of talking. So then you're going, okay, well, I'll put another song on, but hang on, this song's 4.5 minutes. So that means at 2.5 minutes, I've got to try and fade the song out and pray that it's in the chorus, and it's not someone's favourite bit of the song, so it sounds terrible,
Yeah, you don't want to miss the guitar solo at the end of Hotel California.
That's it.
G'day everyone. Just a short interruption. Please hit the subscribe button. It's a massive help to me. I'm trying to grow the channel, and there's a lot of work goes into putting these podcasts together, and any help that you can give me in doing that is much appreciated. Thanks. Hope you enjoy the podcast.
So my goal was always to be a Class 1 announcer, what they call. You start out as a Class 2 announcer, which is when I was at Classic Gold 4LM, the best songs of all time. You never forget all of the call signs of your radio stations that you work at. So at about 8 months, I sent out, once again, about 10 tapes, and I ended up getting about 4 jobs then. I got pretty much still sort of similar, smaller radio stations, but I took the job at Albury Wodonga just because it was, it was the nights. I could do my own thing. And I started the McDonald's Rock 30 as it was back then. They just launched.
Big change from Mount Isa.
And AFL, I never realised when you get communities like that, it's a border town, you've got 2 towns, it's very different from anything I'd ever had to kind of work in before.
Competition between the 2 towns?
Always. And you had to learn all of these weird, things that one town liked, the other one didn't like, and you had to be careful on air what you were saying, or you'd have people ringing you up abusing you. And, even when daylight saving ended for a while, it ended in New South Wales and hadn't ended in Victoria for another 2 weeks. So you had half the town was on the wrong time.
That sounds like the Tweedheads cool and get us.
That's what it's like. So, but I had my own show. So I started, and my whole life I fought music directors. Always fought them because I'm like, it's supposed to be a countdown. We've got to play the songs that the demographic listening wants, not just go into some program or make your job easy. So after about probably 6 months of fighting with me, they just let me go. So every day my first job was to put the 30 songs in, and I changed them every day, and I watched the ARIA charts as it was back then because there was no digital stuff. Mm-hmm. So I built my show from the music.
So you got to pick all the music?
Yep.
And before that, they would dictate to you?
Every radio station does. There is no radio station in the world that would let you do what I did.
Oh, wow.
It's like people, even listen now and they go, oh, I hate that song. Why do you play it? I'm like, man, I don't pick the music. It's done. They have a music director who's supposed to know what they're doing.
Is the music director per station or for the whole network?
Back in the day, every radio station had one. At the moment, it's changing a lot, obviously, with all the networking. So you get you'll have a group music director, and then he'll have smaller guys, some guys who are in charge of putting the music in. Obviously, there's things called crossfades, where the lyrics start, things like that you need to know. So when you're talking into a song, okay, I've got 12 seconds of instrumental before they start singing, so I can talk over that.
You can talk over the musos.
Yeah,
you can't talk over the music.
You get that wall of sound, which everybody loves in the radio world. And, I know a lot of artists don't like it, but radio stations butcher their music. They'll just chop it all off. There'll be no rap versions of rap songs. And you'll just go, I don't want to play the no rap. I want to play the real version. But yeah, so Albury Wodonga was great for me. I learned a lot. I had probably my first great PD. His name was Phil Giblin. He's very eccentric, but he kind of went, mate, and it's on you. You need to perform. And he really put some pressure on me, which made me lift. It was a very interesting time because everything was
very much a learn on the job.
It was. I was still playing CDs, reel to reels. There was no recording into computers. I still had a phone with a handpiece with buttons that you'd press to go to air. Lots of live
Not
stuff
even the
still in
dial.
delay. No, this one didn't have a dial. It had buttons, but it was like almost that old. But I learned a lot, and because I was so successful at nights down there, they gave me a crack at breakfast, which I always kind of struggled at. I was never a get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and be really happy person. I kind of did it for about 6 months and then decided it was time to move on.
That would be hard because it's particularly going from night to that.
It was.
It's almost like that shift work in reverse, isn't it?
Well, when you're doing nights, you're kind of king of the kids. Back then it was kind of your core demo was kind of 17 to 25-year-olds. When you go to breakfast, it becomes older, so that you can't have as much fun and, do the kind of kooky stuff that I really like doing, But breakfast was still good. It was once again another challenge. I did quite well. The ratings were always good. We didn't have a lot of competition back then. B104.9 was their first FM station there, so it launched and didn't do well. They tried to launch it as just an FM brand of the AM station, which didn't work.
What was the big difference, going back then, between AM and FM? AM's now mainly talk show.
It is, but there are still, if you get out into the regions, there are still AM stations.
So, but going back then, what was the main difference?
The music just sounds so much better because you've got a dual signal, so you're getting a stereo effect. AM's mono.
Oh.
So that's why B104.9 rocks the border, because the border town was their call sign, and it did really well. So I was there for about nearly 2 years. But the AFL thing, I've got to come back to that. That's what killed me. I just couldn't get into the sport, and they worship it.
Yeah.
So, when you're on the radio as a kind of a flagship person in the community, if you're not talking AFL, back then it was VFL, they had the local guys were like gods. I used to think I was cool. I was a radio guy, and I hooked up with a VFL player, and we'd go places and you get everything for free. And I go, but hang on, I'm the media guy. What about me? So, I had to learn, and, it's something you always be humble and try to leave your ego at the door, which is hard to do sometimes.
Yeah. So you would have met some interesting people in Albury Wodonga. You met Wazza and Millsy.
Yeah. That's kind of, those guys introduced me to working with musos and live music, and I sang my first song with those guys, Werewolves of London, which they didn't tell me. They just got me up, gave me the microphone, and I'm going, and I've got, I can't remember, I think it was Wazza whispering in my ear what the words were. It was for Camp Quality.
Okay.
So we did a lot of charity stuff back then, and but you, once again, it was very embarrassing, but you learn really quick, and you know that even if you can't sing, if you get up there and give it your heart and have fun, normally the crowd will back you and just go along with you because you're the radio guy. You're not supposed to be able to sing.
Yeah, absolutely. So 6 years in Walbury?
No, 2.
2 years. And then what happens?
It was the weather too. Okay, so I used to come to the Gold Coast on my holidays. So down there, they'd have 6 to 8 weeks where top was 6 degrees, cloudy. So I kind of get my energy from the sun, right? So I'd come to the Gold Coast at 16 degrees here, and I'd be sunbaking, and locals would be walking past freezing, and I'd be going, I've got to get out. So I once again applied for a lot of jobs, sent out my tapes like you did, and I got 4 jobs. I got a job at Triple M Sydney, I got a job at B105, I got a job at CFM on the Gold Coast, and I got one other job I can't remember. All of them were either floaters, a radio station floater is somebody who fills in with people on holidays. They don't really have their own show.
Yeah.
And like a B105, for an example, that's where you start, and then they kind of blood you and see what you like and see where you go. But the CFM one on the Gold Coast was my own gig. It was my own one. And I'll never forget the Albury radio stations, Albury-Wodonga, had been sold, and I was waiting on the fax with the signature to say I'd got the job on the Gold Coast. And they had that meeting, where they get all the stuff together. It was the Gamble brothers who bought it, and they said, don't worry, no one panic. No one's losing their jobs. Everything will be all right. And I'm going, and I remember my father saying to me, if you ever hear that, panic, start panicking. So I'll never forget, we had the meeting, and I walked out for the meeting, and then I saw the CFM logo come out, and I was gone. And the next month they let go about 11 people.
Wow.
So, and that was kind of it wasn't just them. That was kind of the change of the guard going from the 90s into the 2000s, where they went, we don't need all these people. We've got now technology that can do some of these jobs.
Big changes with technology, I'd imagine, yeah. Make it more efficient.
So then I came to the Gold Coast, which changed my life, and it was probably the best decision I ever made, because I love the Gold Coast. It's part of me. Always was when I was growing up, when I lived in Toowoomba and out in the bush, and my dad was a stock inspector, and we used to live 40 mile out of town, and I used to shoot rabbits to feed the dogs. So it's a big change. Now I'm on the Gold Coast. I get the big gig, and I go in and do the production. I've got like the Hawaii 5-0 theme, to start the show, and I do all this stuff, and I'm so excited. Same thing again, fighting with the music director about the music, and once again I had a win, took over the music there as well, which never happens. But anyway, first show, fire this off. It's the Hawaii 5-0 theme. I can't remember what the show, I think it was the Hot 30 back then before I changed it. It all goes fantastic, and I'm going, all right, I've got these prizes, and I go to the phones, and I come from Albury-Wodonga, where I did quite well. We got lots of interaction with callers, and I had one call. I'll never forget it to this day. It's about 1994. I picked the phone up, to talk to him, and all the guy says, you can hear him smoke, he's doing a bong. Play some Nirvana, man. That's all he said, and hung up. And I got this sweat, and I went, oh my God, mate, you have so much work to do to build this.
Yeah.
So, then fast forward a few years, we go to the sunny coast, Central Coast. The show then starts getting networked to about 40 plus stations. We're in WA, all around Australia, Tasmania. And, we changed the name of the show because I was down the beach one day, and, the yellow surf lifesaving huts.
Yes.
Saw that, and I went, imagine how cool it'd be to do a radio show out of one of those.
Yeah, yeah.
So I started calling it. It was the Hot 30 with Craig, and then I started saying live from the beach house. And then people would ring me up and go, oh, if you're at the beach house, man, you must be the Big Kahuna. And that's where the name came from. So, and you'll love this. We have these things called consultants that come into radio stations, paid a lot of money, and they listen to your show and they give you feedback. And these guys sat down and they went, that Big Kahuna thing will never work. It'll never happen. You got to get rid of it. They basically shit-canned the whole idea.
Wow.
Right? 6 weeks later, the ratings come out, boom, through the roof. We have the next meeting. Yeah, we love what you're doing there. That's great. So, yeah, that's the rest with that is kind of history. The show just kept growing and growing. I did get some offers to go to Cap City stations, like your Sydney, Melbourne's, but it was just the lifestyle for me. I looked at the money was a lot better, but to live there, to support a family, you just couldn't have the lifestyle that I had. 20 minutes from the beach, the country. I had my parents in Toowoomba.
I guess it's that thing, the money goes up, but the cost of living goes up too, if you want to.
Well, I'll be honest, one of the offers I got was $250,000, which was good.
Yeah.
So I'm going back to the early noughties, and I went to Sydney to look, and I couldn't buy a house under $1 million that I want to live in. And I just went, I can't afford that. Yeah. So I can't live there. And you were nearly 40 minutes to an hour away from the beach. Then you had the traffic and you had all of these things. And then I kind of had to reinvent myself. And then at the same time, the show at CFM just kept growing and growing and growing. I worked for Reg Grundy, who's a massive TV icon for a while. He's probably one of the most fun guys I ever worked with. I'll never forget, I won an award. We went over to this swanky hotel, had the awards, and I won this award. And he hands it to me, and I'll never forget, I put it under my arm and broke it. I went crack and broke straight away as I was shaking his head. And I had the gall to give him a Beach House Band Big K T-shirt at the time. And we're outside and having a drink. And he goes, oh, yeah, look, I've come up on my boat, and he points over there, and I go, "Oh, is it behind that big skyline? Like that big ocean liner there?" He goes, "No, that's the one." It had 30 staff.
Oh,
it was just massive, yeah. So he was lovely. He was no ego, down to earth. When he left, I thought he didn't care about the T-shirt, and the next minute his security guard comes running back in his suit, and he goes, "Oh, Mr. Grundy wants his T-shirt. Where's his T-shirt?" And I go, "Oh, he did care. Here's your T-shirt." So to this day, that's one of the highlights of my career. I gave Reg Grundy a Big K and the Beach House Band T-shirt, so it was awesome.
Yeah, because the Beach House Band, that was a thing, because obviously Wazza and Millsy followed you up to the Gold Coast.
Well, actually, I think I followed them.
Oh.
I actually think, believe it or not, something happened and they moved to the Gold Coast first.
Yep.
And then the job thing happened and I came out, and it was kind of a bit of coincidence. But then because I'd done they gave me my first, song on stage, I kind of started emceeing events, and I've got to tell this story. So when I come to the Gold Coast, the money was so bad. Yeah. I was getting $500 a week from the radio station, and I was making $1,000 a week emceeing events out and about at nightclubs. So that's how bad the money was. If I didn't do the nightclub stuff, so big thanks to any of the nightclub guys that helped me at the time, I could never have stayed here.
Wow. So,
and then slowly, as the show grew into more markets,
because that was before it was syndicated too and networked.
Yeah, it was just
because did the networking, does that mean the money goes right up?
Yeah,
do you actually get a?
It does. Yeah, no, I feel sorry because there are a couple of, only probably 2 shows that the guys lost their gig because I came into their market, which you always feel bad. I talked to both of them, had a chat, and kind of said, look, not my decision, and because you don't want to do that. I still think radio's biggest power and why it's survived to this day is locality.
Yeah.
If we have an event that happens, you can still put some batteries in your radio and listen. We all know now when the Wi-Fi goes down, how crippling your life is and how much it changes. So that's what I think radio's kind of having a resurgence because of that. People are realising that, I've got Spotify, I can go on YouTube, I can do all these things. But after a while, not that you get sick of it, you kind of just want to put something on that's easy to listen to, that's there and a bit of company if you're doing something else.
I guess also too, I remember and I guess it's still the same, but when I was younger, you would listen to radio that's how you learn about new songs, about new things, what was going on around the thing. I think it's also one of those things too. I remember when my first job, working at a sugar mill, my first job, the radio was always on in the background. And I guess a lot of workplaces are like that.
Yeah. The new music was something that I always tried. Go right back to Albury Wodonga when I did nights. I did any interview. I started to build a relationship with all of the record labels, and I interviewed some of the worst artists in the world. Some of them ended up being big artists, and some of them never forgot, and I consistently had relationships with them. And I'll never forget I had Molly Meldrum. I grew up watching Countdown, so to be able to get him, and the only reason he talked to me is because I could talk AFL football, which, remember, I knew nothing about. So I just let him just talk about his favourite, AFL
Is
side.
He Collingwood fan?
No.
No? Magpie?
No, keep going.
Oh, man. Essendon.
Essendon. That's it. Yes, Essendon.
I know the names, I just haven't.
Because he loved Essendon.
Essendon, that's right.
He would talk about football for 3 minutes, and then 1 minute he would give me all of the good oil on the new music, which then grew. And then because he knew all the record labels, then I started to build a relationship. And then when you fast forward to being networked across 40 stations, then suddenly I start to get a bit of power where when big artists like Christina Aguilera broke, I've got BMG on the phone going, you got to play the song. I'm going, nah, I'm not going to play the song until you get her on the phone to me. And then that night, ring, ring, she's in the back of a limo ringing me, doing an interview. And that was Genie in a Bottle. And then, there's lots of stories like that. And you start to kind of, you need that new music base, which is a shame now because that's not there. I mean, everyone goes, oh, it's so wonderful there's no record labels and everybody gets the same opportunities.
They don't really.
Well, the challenge you got is there's so many now, you don't know, well, at least for the record labels, they went, this guy's got some talent or this girl or this band, and they put the momentum behind that. Now you don't have that person going through and trudging through all the ones you may not like to get to the one you do.
I do remember a time when we were doing gigs and you were doing MCing and party tricks and all that sort of stuff in the breaks and promoting the gig. We would go in and have a conversation about new music that the band was going to learn. And the conversation that we had at one particular point, you were saying, that every week there was something like, 60 plus new songs would come in from record labels, whatever. And out of those 60, probably 3 went into rotation.
Yep.
And the rest of them just
died.
Into the bin. And then next week, another 60 and only 3. And that's just from record companies, let alone independent artists trying to break into the music industry. Who made those decisions about what got played on radio for those out of those? Was that something you sat down and talked with a musical director, or is that something you got to decide, or is that just basically determined by the charts? Because when it's new music, I guess it's not charting yet.
No, it was if the record label was going to put a lot of promotion behind it.
Yep.
So like when 50 Cent broke.
Yep.
That was kind of a bit edgy. So for them, it was like they walked in and they said, all right, we've got a $5,000 promo to do. What do you want to do? If you had the song, we'll give you $5,000. So it was almost like, not blackmail, but you knew if the record company was prepared to put their money where their mouth was and they were going to give this, and sometimes it didn't work, believe me, like 1 in 10 didn't work.
Yep.
But most of the time, if they were prepared to give you money for a promotion to help get the song played, the song would work. And I suppose that the challenge you got now, because I'm still on air, still doing sort of a cut-back version as a hobby of what I used to do, is the same thing's happening. There's 600 songs,
wow,
of which we play maybe 6 and maybe 1 makes it through. I play so many songs I go, now this is big on TikTok for 2 weeks and it's never heard of again.
Wow.
Because people love the TikTok vision and they all watch it, and then the artist goes, all right, well, I've got 1 million streams on TikTok. Well, you don't. It's because they're watching the vision that your music's going along with. It's actually not your music.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the new wave of how young people and new artists are getting around.
Because a lot of new music is being broken on TikTok.
Yeah.
Is that the main source of new music, or is it coming from other places as well? Or how is that working? I know that there was a massive thing not too long ago where Universal pulled all their music off TikTok. And a lot of artists were really upset about that.
Well, the other thing, people think they can use any music they want on their Facebook and YouTube clips, and you get 8 seconds and then they'd cut it off. So you'll do this fantastic video and 8 seconds in, it's gone. So I think what's happening is you've now got, we went through, obviously we've got to talk about Australian Idol and The Voice. There was that push, which is still kind of we're recovering from, which really I believe did a lot of damage because you put these people up on a pedestal, you kind of fast forwarded their career a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Normally they would have to go out and pay 1,000 gigs,
yep.
And out of that 1,000 gigs they would get so good. If you look at Bon Jovi's documentary,
and they'd build a bit of a following too.
A following, but if you look at Bon Jovi's documentary, they do 3,000 gigs,
yep.
before we get to hear them in Australia. So you know how good you're going to get. Yeah. You're either going to be great or you're going to be crap. Whereas when you look at those, the kind of Australian Idol things, they fast forwarded their career, they threw these people out there. And then a lot of them struggled and a lot of them fell away because then the next one came a few months later and the next one came and you got multiple shows and you got all these people that are solo performing artists that really don't have a clear direction with what their sound is, where they want to go and what career path they're going to take. So after a while, a lot of them, the wheels kind of fell off and they go nowhere.
An interesting thing I saw just recently where someone was talking about songs that had been hits by bands. And in the last, is it 10 years, maybe even longer, that every number one hit is a solo artist. There's been no band.
And that's what these shows like Australian Idol, The Voice, that's what they did. They promoted solo artists. So I often, say on the radio even now, isn't it a shame that, your bands like, your Thirsty Mercs and your Spider Baits and all those ones.
Even Foo Fighters and...
all those, yeah, if you want to go overseas, those ones as well, there's no platform for them anymore. People think you get a band together, you give it 6 months and it's not. If you get a band together, the complexities of different personalities and that journey.
It's a hard thing to hold together.
It is. Most of the massive bands have gone through so much turmoil for a decade, and
it's sort of funny though, part of that turmoil is what creates the music.
It is, well, because they learn.
Yeah.
They do different gigs, when you perform live and the sound, and it's amazing when you watch all these docos coming out now. Like Motley Crue's a great example. They kind of clicked. That's why they call Motley Crue, odd guys to put together, but they just had a magic when they came on stage, and that's what we're missing in the bands now. The magic isn't there. And even when I go out and see live performers, you know, I get really cranky with them. All the songs sound the same because they can Google the lyrics. They'll have an iPad in front of them and they'll Google the lyrics and they'll be on an acoustic guitar if it's a solo and they'll sing it, and every song will sound exactly the same. It's like, guys, do you not understand? If you're going to do, especially covers, you need to look at how the cover or how the song that you're covering went, and you need to mimic that. Otherwise, it isn't that song. You're just singing the words to someone strumming a guitar. And the other thing I hated about Ed Sheeran, right? Ed Sheeran's a genius. He's great. But the whole, you know, playing a thing, recording it and looping it and all that, like, please, you know, we go to see live music to see people actually play it, not to loop the same thing over and over again 6 times and create some kind of musical hodgepodge while they're performing a live song. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So anyway, there's my music rant.
Yeah, well, it's a funny thing. He could afford a tour with a large band.
I don't get it. I went and saw him at Suncorp and it was horrific. He would have been great in a pub somewhere, but when you go and see him with thousands and thousands of people and you got one guy doing this thing.
I didn't see it. I would have liked to have seen it, but I mean, some people raved about how amazing it was.
No, it's hopeless. Love his music. Like, I love his music, but as a performer in a large... I went and saw Bruno Mars at a similar time.
Yep.
Bruno Mars is like, my goodness, the talent that guy's got, because he had people around him and he was... you know, you need the picture frame around the picture.
But he's also... There was all the... I mean, with Bruno Mars, I'd imagine dance moves, costumes...
Yeah, he did the whole thing.
The whole thing.
But sometimes he came out in gym shorts with a singlet on and could still perform, and, you know, he had that... Like I was saying, you need the picture frame. If you're the picture, you don't put pictures on the wall with no frame around it.
Yeah.
You know, so, and you know, no offense to Ed Sheeran. I know he's wonderful. There is a story, I don't know if you've heard the Jamie Foxx story, where he took him to a very black part of America. You know that story?
I did see that story,
He got up with a ukulele.
Yeah.
So
he said...
if you
had
get
his
a
mate
chance,
going, what's this white cracker doing?
That's it.
He's going to kill the vibe, man.
Got a standing ovation, which is, you know, so the guy's very talented. It's just horses for courses. And I'm waiting to see what the next evolution in music is, to see where are the bands going to come from, because they're lacking.
The hard part in this country, and I would assume it's very similar everywhere in the world, is the lack of venues. Like, you remember when you were coming to gigs with us, like, and we were doing Billy's Beach House, and we started off at the Rose and Crown.
The Rose and Crown was great.
With Wazza and I, and you were doing stuff. But that was on a Thursday night or a Wednesday night. I can't remember now. But the band was doing 5 nights a week as a band. Now, there's virtually no venues around that I know of that are having bands 5 nights a week.
No.
You'd be lucky to get 2 nights on a weekend.
I suppose.
And there's a lot less venues than there used to be. So I'm guessing the hard part is where do these bands get the experience? Where do they get to play?
And I suppose the poker machine's got a lot to answer for.
I think there's a lot of reasons.
They've worked out now, they did a survey, that there's more poker machines than toilets. So that's, I mean, they're the things I see the younger generation, you know, you got younger friends that are in their 20s going off, having a laugh. You see them, you know, I was kind of shocked. 6 or 8 of them standing around poker machines playing it, it was kind of like, you know, an entertaining thing for them. I couldn't think of anything. When I was in Mount Isa, it was so boring up there. The nightlife, we used to get at the Irish club, I used to get beer coasters and jam them in the poker machines and race them, put $10 in each one and race the poker, like do crazy stuff like that. But I think that, you know, I don't want to get into the do-gooders, but the do-gooders that talk about gambling and, you know, we've got to be careful of all that sort of stuff. And yet, if you go to a lot of places, I've been there late at night, you can't get served unless you're gambling.
Oh, man.
You can't get food, but you can play you can drink and play the poker machine. So I think there's a lot of that. Hang on. Let's look at the morals behind all of this. Let's not start making all these rules that just aren't going to help us.
I think a difficult thing is it's going to be hard to get someone in government to make a change when it's a large source of their revenue. I think, was it 45% of the money that goes through a machine, it goes in tax straight back to the government? So it's really difficult when that's a large source of their revenue. But also, I have heard statistically that poker machine revenue is going down because people with online gambling on their phones.
Well, not only that, there's so many of them now. So what you got to be careful. They do all these studies and they kind of, they tweak the results.
Yeah.
So, when you got a lot more, they're going down for these venues because there's more places. You remember the old days, they used to get buses from Queensland and take them across the border to Tweed because we didn't have them.
Yeah, it's true. Like Seagulls Club was massive and Twin Towns was massive, basically built off the back of poker machines.
And we've got to give them kudos now. I mean, Twin Towns is one of the main venues that's still live music. They really do a great job on this.
They do. It's cut back a lot from what it used to be.
But the question is, to wrap up the music side of the conversation, is what's going to be the next evolution? Because people always find a way. People are going to get sick of the produced Spotify stuff. Like, I'll start listening to Spotify and then suddenly I'm listening to somebody else's list or someone else's, songs. And I go, I don't want to listen to that. I asked you, because I talked to Google Home, I wanted this. And it's kind of like they're trying to lead you in a direction. And I don't like that. And that's why sometimes I loved it the other weekend. We had NBN had an issue and we had no internet. So I had the record player going and I was just getting that. It's a completely different experience.
I have a theory about where music's going to go. If you look back through history, particularly from 60s through the 70s, through the 80s, into the 90s. So music, there was a point in time where there was the big bands, and then there was the Beatles came along, and then there was disco. And as a backlash to the refining of that music, then came punk. And punk was more music for the uneducated masses. And it was a revolt against everything that had become refined and become institutionalised. And then punk got refined and then became 80s rock, and then 80s rock went into became glam rock and guys with big hair, and then there was a revolution against that which became grunge. In the 90s it was basically punk. And then so that became and that sort of got a bit more refined and controlled by record companies, I guess, to some degree, and became a bit more
commercial,
unmanageable. And then somehow money comes into it and people go, oh, we've got to pull our heads in. And it's been a while since we've had a punk movement, some sort of anti-establishment type musical thing.
Well, I keep trying to say to people, when you go on a Spotify, that money goes to America. We don't see any of it. When you buy a local artist's album or you do it not digitally, they actually get the money. Otherwise, they get hardly, I don't know, you'd know more than I do. If you sell a song on Spotify, what do they get, 8 cents?
Well, you don't sell a song, it's just streaming. And it's...
No, but you know how you can release stuff and people can actually buy the album or...
Oh, they can?
Yeah, you can buy stuff.
I didn't know you could buy stuff on Spotify. I know you can on Apple.
It gets so hard to keep up with. That's the other thing I get, I don't know where the digital thing's going to go because you lose, and I want to spend a second talking about the album experience, which I really miss.
Yeah.
You buy an album and it takes you on a journey.
Yeah.
People who just listen to one-off songs, you miss that whole experience because oftentimes you'd buy an album because you like these 2 songs and you listen to the album a few times and they're your least favourite songs.
Absolutely.
Because you were taken on a journey and artists would spend ages going, oh no, the tracks have to be arranged like this because they had this idea in their head of what needs to be listened to where so it all fits together to get the full experience. And that isn't there anymore. That's why I love putting the record on. I was putting on Tom Petty's Full Moon Fever and some Pink Floyd stuff that just had this, wow factor to it that you kind of miss. It's very move on. Here's the next one. Move on. Here's the next one. So, I don't know where we're going to go and what the next thing is.
It's an interesting thing that the concept of the album. I'm recording a guy from Chile at the moment, and he's got 12 songs that are almost finished, and he's going to put it out on vinyl. And he's quite a big artist in Chile. He's got a following in Chile.
So
but
only on vinyl?
Only on vinyl. He's not going to release it digitally at all. I mean, I know that Jack White, that was one of the things that he did with some of his stuff. I wonder if that would be a
Yeah.
It's not a new thing. People have been.
Well, AC/DC did it back in the day. Back in one of their last albums when the digital thing was hitting, they went, no, you can only buy it on vinyl or, dare say, was it cassette or whatever the other? No, CD, obviously.
Yeah.
Vinyl and CD, you could only get it on that, and they made a lot. You make a lot more money like that because the whole digital thing, I don't think there's the same split in it
It's
for the
definitely
artist.
devalued a lot of things, hasn't it? I mean, it's not only music, the whole digital thing with art, now AI coming into it.
The other thing I suppose we need to mention too is when you go and see live music, you got to support people, but you also have to be honest. I see a lot of live acts and people think they're wonderful and you feel like saying to them, look, you've got potential, you're on the way, but you're not wonderful. You need to work on these things. So I think there's a bit of that too where this, you can't be seen as being negative. And I get it, you can't, but I don't want you to tell me I'm wonderful.
If you're not.
No. And there's this thing, we've got to be careful with the new generation of musos and encourage. You do have to encourage, but you've also got to say, you need to work on these things. You're not wonderful. Because a lot of them, you hear the feedback and you go, my God, these people are going to walk away thinking they're 10 times better than they are. And far be it from me to walk in and actually give them some feedback because they're not going to take it on board. They're going to get offended.
Yeah, that's the difficult thing. It's that fine line between something that is honest criticism.
And I always used to say this analogy, right? People would give me their CDs back in the day. I don't do it so much anymore. And they would say, have a listen. Everyone says it's wonderful. We want your honest feedback. And I'd say to them, so I didn't offend them, okay, so on the radio, let's use the modern artists. You've got Ed Sheeran, Dua Lipa, Bruno Mars. You've got these guys we're playing on the radio. You want that song played on the radio. Do you think it's the same level as those songs? And they would go, no. I go, so how can I play it and not play one of those artists?
Wow.
You can say it's new and it's up and coming, but if it doesn't have the legs to at least have its spot and take that airtime, you can't play it.
With radio now, because you're still doing a radio show, do you find there's more country creeping into commercial popular music?
Yeah, I've always been a big country fan, probably.
Well, you're from Toowoomba originally.
Yeah, Toowoomba. But it's funny. You have to go out into the country to start to get your love of country music back. Because when you go camping and you get kids and you start to get out there again, no other music works, but the country music kind of fits. It's a real energy, weird sort of thing.
The country music has changed a lot over the past decade or so too.
I still listen to the old stuff now. I still put on...
Back at Slim Dusty?
Yeah, well, Slim's going a bit far, but I'll put on, like I can do Dolly Parton. Okay. I can do something that it just fits when you're out in the country for a laugh sometimes, but you get that. So I think
bit
country
of Brooks and
pop...
Dunn?
Yeah, some of it. Yeah, some of it I like. But the country pop, that kind of sound that's coming through now, definitely there's room in the radio. We're playing a lot more of it, although Beyonce's country album was a complete flop, which made me laugh. I didn't mind it. I thought it was all right.
I didn't really have a listen to it. I guess I should have, but...
Yeah, Texas Hold'em we played everywhere. It went really, really well because it was Beyonce. And
I guess there was a lot of... what's the word I'm looking for?
Animosity because she's not a country artist?
Well, yeah, there was a bit of that. Country, to some degree, I think you have to be...
You have to earn your stripes.
Well, I think you've got to be all in. Country people, I think people who are into country music like the honesty of it, or it's like they want to feel like that person's living the country thing.
Yeah.
The concept of a crossover artist. I think you can be a country artist and cross over into rock pop, but I don't necessarily think it works the other way.
But even when you cross over and you play the fast car song, it's still a country version. It's not...
Well, he was a country artist doing
that's what I mean.
A pop song.
Well, when you listen to Fast Car, it's a country version of it. He's not trying to outdo Tracy Chapman, which he could never have done.
Yeah.
I mean, his story with that was great. I was a bit funny when I first went, what are you doing this for? But then when, you have that kind of connection where it was one of his favourite songs, he loved her as an artist and he's got all that kind of story, you go, okay, I get it, and he's... Yeah. And plus he's country, but he's so pop, like some of his stuff that he does... Like When It Rains, It Pours, he's almost got comedy in there. He's got, so many different aspects and genres. But I think it's time in Australia. I think it's time for country. I think it's time for us to go. You know what? Stop the
because it was always a very big thing in America.
Always, yeah. But it's always seen in Australia as the cap cities and the major cities no country.
Yep.
But the country was like classic Gold 4LM, the best songs of all time. Back in the day, in 94, whenever I was there, I played 2 country songs an hour.
Wow.
I played the Lee Kernigans and probably not so much the Slim Dusties, but you played your country music as part of an hour of music along with your classics. And I think now we're getting to the stage in Australia, probably that country pop's getting played at least once to twice an hour. I mean, even you can argue with me, but even Taylor Swift sometimes, she's about as commercial pop as you can get. There are some songs I listen to and I go, there's almost a country feel to that.
Well, she started out as a country artist.
When you grow up on a Christmas tree farm and you get a job when you're 14 writing music for Sony, I mean, she's had the easiest life, like just nowhere near a normal person, seriously, so...
but she's been very clever about it though too.
She's lovely. Like I've talked to most of the big ones like her. She's lovely to chat to, but you just... like even Bon Jovi, talking to him, they're not real people. Like you go, mate, you're just surrounded by yes men. It's like you get to that stage of stardom, whether it be the money or the celebrity status, where no one says no to them. So they play a song, and I believe that's where a lot of the big acts go wrong. They lose their way because they don't have those cornerstone or milestone people in their life that tell them the truth. So they go off because they want to try something new and it doesn't suit them, but because they want to do it and it's refreshing.
I guess that thing too, it's they want to feel like they're evolving.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like there's not a lot of artists that get to stand the test of time and make it through changes because music does change, popular music does change, the styles and stuff. I mean, bands like U2, the Rolling Stones, who managed to go through decades.
I think the key, though, is they all have a nice big break, whereas you get guys who consist, like Elton John's one who tried to just keep that, he's getting his ego hit every time he put a song. And he had that. I've seen him in concert, and for a 70-year-old, he's fantastic.
Yep.
But he has that bit where you go, mate, it kind of ended in the 90s, the early 90s, and there's that bit where he went off and did Hakuna Matata kind of,
musicals
kids,
for film. He did a lot of music for film.
But he never really got it back.
Yeah.
He had that magic from the sort of 70s, 80s, even into the 90s, and then he kind of lost it. That's what you remember for. And for a solo artist even to have 30 years of success,
oh man,
that's
phenomenal.
Yeah,
it's
pretty
phenomenal.
Amazing. So radio used to go full circle, play a large role in helping break musical artists. At the moment, it doesn't. It's dictated by what people are watching with their TikTok, and there's a lot of that. So the record label may still come in and got these artists, or you'll go, holy mackerels, everybody's watching this thing. It's got 10 million hits, and it's got this song in it. Okay, we'll test that song and see what it's like.
How do you know if a song is working on radio or not? How do you know?
In the old days, they used to do like auditoriums where you get 300 people in and you play them snippets and they'd say good, bad or ugly kind of thing. Now they do it. They send out, I'm not a big fan of this. So I'll be like, your chance to win a prize if you partake in this survey, and they email it out or they send it out via some kind of digital streaming, and you listen at home on your computer, on your laptop, and then you pick and they correlate that stuff and they go, out of the 300 people, 50% like this song or 70%. And they'll have a cutoff, if more than 60% like it, we'll keep pushing it and playing it. What they don't take into, and I'm still fighting with music directors to this day, into account, is people just click through to get the prize. So that doesn't really give you a true indication.
Yeah.
Plus, sitting at your laptop or your computer or on your iPhone doing the thing, you don't hear the sound the way it's meant to be. So a lot of great songs fall through the cracks. The best part about FM radio that still exists today is if you get a really good song that's made for FM radio, it'll still beat any digital streaming service. I know because I remember when I used to play CDs and then I went to, I think it's MP4s or whatever the upgraded version of MP3 was that was digitally put into the computer. It was never as good. A record vinyl probably still, a Hot August Night, Neil Diamond.
Yep.
If you play that on a really, clear day and you hear it on the radio, that lifts that sound, and you'll never get the sound anywhere else.
Yep.
Not unless you're going to go and spend $50,000 on a system at home. And kind of because it's the digital revolution's come and it's easier, you kind of go, oh yeah, but it's easier. So yeah, it's 2% not as good. And then, that was CD. And then we went 2% not as good to the digital stuff. And then we went, so you've lost kind of 5% of that quality of sound that we used to have back in the day.
Yeah.
Because the technology is easier and we all got used to it.
Instant access.
Yeah. it's still to this day, some songs pop on the radio. They just have that sound. It just fits. Ed Sheeran stuff's very good on the radio. Like he can write a radio hit.
Yep.
Like you listen to his songs, they tell stories, they've got meaning, and they've got that nice, clear, crisp song. Bruno Mars is the same. And then you get some other artists that don't sound so good on the radio, but if you listen to them at home, that was your grungy stuff. A lot of your grungy stuff didn't really work as well on the radio as it did listening to it at home. You know, I'd say 10% we help break artists. You know, like I'll always give local people on the Gold Coast a go over anybody else. I do lots of country artist interviews, more so than anyone else that I've ever done before. Like your Melanie Dwyer, I've got her coming up. If they play Groundwater or they play festivals, you know, I'll always talk to them, whether it's Susie Quattro playing the Red Hot Summer Tour, who, you know, I got off interviewing her because I used to watch her as Leather Tuscadero on Happy Days when I was like 6.
Yep.
You know, whether it's them, because she's got no ego. She doesn't care. She's done it a million times. You know, I love that kind of normal person that everybody puts on a pedestal and you go, mate, they're just like you and I. There's no difference.
How would someone get into radio these days? Like, is it still a case of make up a tape and send it round to all the stations? How does someone get into radio?
From day one, I used to always get people ring me up. Okay, number one, radio is a minute industry. So I'd say to people, how many jobs do you think are going in radio at the moment for this month? And they'd say, I don't know, 20, 30, 1. You know, so the whole of Australia right now, there's probably only, if you're starting out and you want to get on air as a announcer, it's probably 1 or 2 jobs going, right? So you know how many radio stations there still are. You know, now we've got some major networks that kind of own most of them, but you've only got a couple of jobs. So you have to be better than everybody else applying to get those 2 jobs. So I'd say to them, it's really simple. Go to any radio station and work for free.
Yeah.
And they would nearly faint and go, what do you mean, work for free? You know, I'd say, well, you'll go to uni for 4 years to get a degree, and then you'll owe the government and have to pay the money back, and you'll have to support yourself where you're going pretty much unless you get the Austudy or whatever it is now. You go to any radio station and you show them that you're willing to put yourself out there, learn, and you might end up in promotions, marketing, sales. You might end up in not on air, but you could end up with a career within 12 months if you show the right aptitude. And that still exists today.
Yeah.
The hardest part today is the do-gooders got involved and you've got to be covered by insurance. So technically you can't work for free because you're not employed, so then the insurance doesn't cover you. So there's all of these layers now that are starting to emerge which make it harder for people to get jobs. It's a tough industry to get into. It doesn't, you've got your 0.01 percenters, your Kyle and Jackie O's, your Hamish and Annies that are on the big money, but your average money's not great. You know, you're looking at 60 to 80 grand is rack rate for kind of a day announcer in regional Australia, and probably even, I got offered a job at Triple M in Brisbane for Ugly Phil a few years back. He was leaving, moving on, and I looked at it and they said, it's 80 grand. I said, I'm not going to do that for that. Are you joking? So, the money's there for the top echelon, for the workers, the kind of in the middle. The money's just not there, but you get into radio because you love what you're doing.
Yeah.
So if you're thinking about the money and that's stopping you, it's not the right profession for you.
Yeah. Well, that's probably fair enough. So it's about having a passion for it.
Yeah. I mean, I loved radio. When I was, the 90s and the noughties, radio in Australia was fantastic. On the Gold Coast, 80% of the Gold Coast listened to me, knew who I was, or, when Indy was on, all of those fantastic events. That's the good part about radio. Even today, you're across what's happening with your local community and you have opportunities like, when the air show comes to the Gold Coast,
yep.
I'm up with the commentators, talking to the commentators, having fun. I don't care. I'm not expecting to get paid for that extra work, but you get that special access because you'll do work for them. There's always that kind of yin and
cross
yang.
promotion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're the opportunities that still exist today if you're willing to do, that little bit extra, treat people along the way. And, it comes back to karma for me. You've always got to remember, whatever you put out, you'll get back. So if you're egotistical and you knock people down on the way up, on the way down, then you're going to get that as well. So Sooner or later, people are going to go, why do all the tours have all the old bands? Like, why are we going and seeing fucking Bachelor Girl and Ice House and people that were big in the 80s and 90s?
Because there's no new bands.
But sooner or later, someone's going to say, well, we need new bands. So how do we get new bands? Well, the venues aren't supporting us. Okay, so,
Record companies aren't.
Well, they can't. There's no money, See, in the old days, remember, we didn't touch on this.
Well, there is money because they've done backdoor deals with Spotify.
Yeah, but it's still not like it was.
No.
No, like, mate, you start watching some of those music. I love the music docos. You start watching the music docos and how much money was being thrown around. Like that Dirty Pop one's great to watch. That guy who started out with blimps.
Okay.
It's the best. Like, it's typical. I don't know if you want to use this, but it's typical music industry. So he does the blimps, advertising blimps.
Yep.
Back in the day, he's like, there's no weirdness to him. He's just a different kind of guy. One of the blimps crashes and he gets an insurance payout. So his dream is he wants a boy band. Mm-hmm. There's no boy bands back then. So he's the one who starts. Oh, actually, there was one. White boy band he wants to do. I think it's Boyzone. No, not Backstreet. He starts with the Backstreet Boys, but they mimic, there's a black band that's, obviously they're great singers. So he starts Backstreet Boys, NSYNC, he starts them all and he controls them all. And then they get to the stage where they go, hang on, this guy's getting all this money, we're getting nothing. And that's where the revolution starts. But he was kind of the seed of, we need these mega bands, these boy bands.
And he could see an
opportunity.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and it's amazing to watch that because he goes right through and does them all.
So looking back over your time in radio, how have things changed?
Well, I suppose, the music's the biggest change, getting rid of the record labels, the digital revolution, all of that stuff. It got to a stage where the audience, was looking for other things. It was moving on. It was going, well, why should I listen to the music that you guys tell me I should be listening to? I can go and listen to my own music. So the audience went down quite dramatically. At that same time, I kind of got older and went, you know what, I want to do different things. So for me, I left the industry for about 8 years where I went out and did digital marketing and tried to reinvent myself, which I think everybody should do. Don't get too comfortable. Always try and look for, doing something that makes you uncomfortable to grow as a human. But then COVID happened and everything that I was doing kind of went out the window and I needed to pay the rent. So once again, I reached out to people. It's all about the karma that I'd helped on the way up. Some of them, didn't take my calls, which I thought was really strange. And some of the ones you think, really helped this person, they'll be able to help me. No. But then 2 or 3, kind of helped me get back on air. Mm-hmm. One of my old assistants who I used to fight with, cats and dogs, got me back on air on Hot Tomato at night. So that kind of helped, get the energy going again. Because COVID was really kind of pulls the rug out of you, your journey and your path. It kind of stopped everything for everybody in the world and kind of went, have a think about things. So it was a good thought process for me to realise that, I'm not too good to do a radio show. I can go back and do that. So it became, what it is today. It's still, I see it as a hobby, but I still love it. And you've got that love for it. You can't turn it off. It's a part of me.
Yeah, you got the passion for it.
Yeah, the passion was still there. So while I still have that, it's a lot easier now because of the digital revolution. I can do things on the weekend that, I don't have to be there, but it sounds like I'm there. You can do that stuff, which makes your life easier.
So you pre-record?
Yeah, you do, but you have to be able to do it in a way that, we get lots of people try and do it and it sounds terrible, but you still got to be local. You still got to put yourself in the chair on that day doing that with people driving around in the cars listening to you or at home. You've got to have that vision to be able to do that to make it sound real, So I still do that. And then obviously my business that I started, my digital marketing, and I have a conveyancing business that I work with buying and selling houses. All of that then started to come back after COVID. So, there's still a part of my life with radio and music that I love. I still, if I get the opportunity, will go out and work with bands and artists, and there's nothing better than a great live band. You can play your Spotify and stuff as much as you like at home, but if you go out and see a live band locally, it's normally at a pub, because I love that kind of atmosphere and they're playing the music that you like, or even at a festival. Some of the festivals are fantastic. I think the Red Hot Summer Tour stuff, I've tried and support those guys as much as I can. It'd be great to see some of the younger bands and artists coming through and getting maybe starting to play with the older guys to get that, experience to see how it was done back then and why they're still doing it.
And to help build a new audience too.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we've still got some great live venues that are taking on the young guys, but when you go there, the older, tried and true ones tend to get a bigger kind of crowd come along.
And one of the things that I've seen at gigs and I guess it's different for everyone because I'm getting older now as well. But generally, a lot of the people that I see at pubs and venues are an older audience.
Yeah.
They're not the younger crowds, younger 20-somethings don't seem to be going to pubs as much as we did when we were young.
No, I think they're partaking in other things and staying at home and doing their own thing.
They can swipe left and swipe right. They don't have to go and find someone to make a relationship.
And that brings us back to where are the bands going to come from, you know? If they're not going out, if they're not, you know, back in the day, as well as the record labels, you had the liquor companies, and the liquor companies, love them or hate them, used to put money behind acts. And then the do-gooders come in and go, oh no, we've got to ban this and stop that.
I do remember a time when cigarette companies used to put money into bands.
Yeah.
There was quite a few tours that were done with the Philip Morris or the Marlboro tour or the...
Really? I don't even remember that.
I remember that. I remember that was good money too.
Well, and that's, I mean, wherever the money comes from, you know, I think that's the next thing for bands and for venues to think creatively and go, okay, you know, what can we do that's going to give us the funds to be able to give these guys the platform to learn their craft and to develop into the bands that we grew up with.
We need a wealthy philanthropist. We need an Elon Musk of music.
Well, that's what we need. If we don't get that, we're going to struggle. But
yeah. Well, thank you very much for spending some time with me today, Craig. It's been awesome. And hopefully you guys have stuck around to the end and there's something in that for everyone listening at home. And hopefully we'll see you on the next podcast.
If you made it to the end and you ring me on Hot Tomato, I'll give you a prize. Okay? There you go. If you made it this far, you bloody deserve one.
Thanks, Craig.
Thanks, Scotty.
Thanks, man. Right. Woohoo.